Well, boils and ghouls, it's your old pal, John Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper. And I want to welcome my good fiends of the Horror Heals podcast. Is horror good for mental wellness? But of course it is. I delight in the delicious deaths of pitiful people on the silver screen. So get ready for a hell of a good time with my new fiends, Corey and Kendall, on the Horror Heals podcast.
Welcome back, Horror Heliacs. I'm Corey, back for another episode with my partner, Kendall. Today's guest is a trickster of a clown who's as mesmerizing as he is mysterious, Circus Envy. Now, before you listen, if you're just listening to the audio version of this, go ahead and take a look on our Instagram, because you can actually see the crazy, fun, wild makeup that Circus Envy did just for our episode. Thank you so much for doing that. All right, this episode is packed with everything from behind-the-scenes stories of Circus Envy doing Sid Haig's Captain Spaulding makeup, to personal tales of growing up as an effeminate gay kid in a conservative Baptist school. We explore how embodying a creepy clown character became a powerful tool for healing, helping Circus Envy turn the things he was once ashamed of into a source of strength and creativity. And you don't want to miss his insights on using horror as a form of shadow work, how taking on the role of the trickster clown allowed him to own his inner darkness and find healing in the process. Plus, we get into some fascinating stories about Karen Black and how Amelia Kincaid's meditative practices help transform shame into pride. So, whether you're a fan of drag, cosplay, or just love a good horror story, this episode has it. And if you're scared of clowns, come on, suck it up and listen anyway. Circus Envy, welcome to the Horror Heals podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. This is exciting. So many things to talk about, but I think where we want to begin is just maybe the origin of Circus Envy.
Okay, so we'll go with the real origin, not the fictional origin. There's so many nuances to that. I started doing haunted houses and just started doing, like a very generic character. And I decided to go toward a clown character. My therapist told me the trickster, she introduced me to the trickster character. So I thought, maybe a clown would be effective. And this is before everyone was doing clowns, and having a more definitive archetype was very effective with people at the haunted houses. So that's kind of how my therapist also told me that the way to the king is through the clown. So I've kind of spent a lifetime processing that. Here's what you get after years of healing.
Exactly. So how was the evolvement or the evolution of where you started to where Circus Envy ended up?
I started at haunted houses and I developed the character more with adding to it. I started going to horror conventions and meeting a lot of people and networking. In that process, I started developing the story behind him, which is really a lot of metaphor for the trauma that I had been through. My initial idea was to have Circus Envy, like this little boy would see this corpse, like a corpse was watching over him, or ghost. The corpse took the clown makeup to diffuse his look, and only ended up, to make it more palatable for the kid, but ended up making it scarier. The fictional story is a little different than that now. That was kind of the initial idea.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Well, yeah, there's definitely two subjects that I'm chomping at the bit to. Let's talk about Amelia Kincaid, because what a fantastic character and iconic character, and love what she does for the horror community. And I love what she does for animals and stuff too. Not everybody knows this, but Rue McClanahan from the Golden Girls was her aunt. And I did an interview with Rue before she passed, and I was able to share that with Amelia, which was nice.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Amelia and I met, I think it was, let me think what year it was, 2010, at Scarefest in Lexington. And I came up to her, and I have a different variation of this character where the brain is exposed, so it was extra bloody. I told her I was gay, and she was like, my aunt is on the Golden Girls. And so we just clicked, and we became friends ever since. And a friend of mine ended up recording some of her meditations. And so we spent some time together, and we were driving. And at that time, she was going to churches and things like that, speaking about her animal communication. And she was a little bit leery of saying that she was a demon previously in the movie. She was a little bit ashamed of it.
Well,
My whole message is you have to go through the dark to get to the light. And I told her, you advocate animals they're demonized. That's what you do. And we talked about so much stuff that that would affect me later. I had no idea she wrote about me in our conversation in her book until someone said, "Is this about you?" And she really took to that and really embraced the horror character then.
And a great ally for the queer community too. So thank you, Amelia.
Yeah, she's absolutely amazing. She also was so fundamental in some of the stuff that I've done to heal, like meditating was just I thought it was just, what you typically see with monks. I didn't know it can be a process of imagination and visualization. I just didn't realize that at all. I thought it was the opposite, just clearing your mind. I'm an overthinker. I can't do that. But I can definitely do that.
It'd be interesting to explore that topic of meditation within the horror community. That's not something we've really talked about yet. So that'd be interesting to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, guided meditations have been huge for me. And I'm trying to see what I can do to record some of my own.
Oh, no, you're fine.
I'm amazed that you do as well as, it is an obstruction, right?
It's like the teeth are denture creamed in, and thanks to an old drag queen trick, my hair is on with carpet tape. I didn't know you could do that. You're like, where's your ball cap? I'm like, it's all me.
Like another thing that it's really cool to see the crossover between drag performance and horror too, what the Boulet brothers have done with Dragula. It's just really, really cool to see those worlds come together.
In 2000, are you guys familiar with Lily White by any chance? She was at Backstreet in Atlanta.
I saw that was in the notes, but yeah, we were going to ask about Lily.
She's amazing. Like everybody knows her. Mark from Nightmare on Elm Street 2, he knew her. She's actually the basis for Aunt Lil in the Squidbillies.
Oh,
his Cartoon Network was based in Atlanta. So anyway, now I forgot where I was going with that. I apologize.
That's okay. No,
okay. 2012, I took Lily to Lexington to Scarefest, which is a very friendly convention, and she was so well received. I always thought drag and haunted houses went together so perfect because we all end up at IHOP afterwards.
Yeah, for us growing up in the Midwest, it would have been Waffle House.
I'm in Georgia, so I know all about Waffle House. I'm just down the road from the original one.
Oh, wow.
The museum.
Yeah, very cool. So what did Lily think of the horror convention?
She slept in a coffin in the 80s, so she was no stranger to it, but I thought it would maybe broaden her audience,
Yeah.
They ate her up. There was nothing like Lily. She unfortunately passed away in 2021, but she had been doing drag since the 70s, and she grew up here in Rome, Georgia, and she didn't want to be the pretty girl, She just went for her own thing. She was just something. She's one of a kind. She knew RuPaul. RuPaul started out here in Atlanta as well, and Lady Bunny, and like a lot of early drag members.
It's such a shame that the drag community is still under attack and trying to be erased, because for a lot of us, like being exposed, like our first drag show or our first time going to a gay bar, a gay club with drag queens, like that is just forged in our memory. It was so special for Kendall and I to visit Stonewall together for the first time. And shout out to Patrina Marie, the first drag queen who just roasted the hell out of me in the audience. The little scared little 21-year-old boy. So we got to do what we can to continue to assist that community.
Yeah, for
Yeah, it's so. I think drag and the cosplay too. That when they're done with intent, they're so healing. And I think within the gay community, the fear of feminine is such a big thing, period, with the gay community and otherwise. With Circus Envy, the thing that was so powerful about him is everything I was ashamed of in real life, I was able to wear in a different scenario and say, what if these things didn't cause me shame? For instance, being a gay guy and being perceived as a predator. I could, claim that as a clown and in a playful way at a haunted house where it was safe to kind of act that out, being aggressive and loud and being just dirty, like they're being perceived with all the things. So I could kind of own that in a different way. Just like what if I own these things and I just wasn't ashamed of them? And it just really helped me. It really did help me do a lot of my shadow work.
You make a very good point, because I feel like, I'm 54 and I grew up in an era and I grew up in the South, and I grew up in an era where, being effeminate was like one of the worst things, even for a gay guy to be. And it's so sad that we're still, in some ways, we're still kind of caught in that mindset. And good for you for like embracing those aspects where you could be playful and let that out there and have a good time.
I didn't exactly know that's what I was doing at the time. It came more into consciousness as I did it.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up in the South?
Blytheville, Arkansas.
Oh, wow.
The very northeast corner. We were closer to Memphis. We had to go to Memphis to do anything, but that was home. I haven't lived there in 100 years, but that was home.
But if you get Kendall around, his half-sister Stephanie or his best friend Jimmy, also both from Arkansas, the accent comes back.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I mean, I think I still have it. We live in New England, and I get teased all the time about my accent, But and it's funny because I secretly still kind of chuckle to myself when everybody's parking the car and all those things that we do up here. It's just comical because they don't think they have an accent at all.
I hear you.
All regional.
I grew up outside of Atlanta and was a gay kid in a Christian school. Like I went to a small Baptist school and, I knew I was gay. I knew I was sexually molested, and I had just so much brewing inside of me. And I really took to monsters even prior to the haunted house because I related a lot to the vampire character. I felt like the boy I was supposed to be was dead. I'm 51, so I'm very close to your age in the South. So you definitely understand. I was always drawn toward metaphor and symbolism, and I just didn't understand that was a language through Carl Jung. I really can't say that name with these teeth.
Not today.
Yeah, and so my therapist kind of opened me up to that, and I was terrified of therapy because I thought, there's a perception that adulthood's going to strip you of your individuality anyway, and therapy, I just thought, they made me bleach my hair blonde.
Yep.
I don't know. And she so embraced my creativity and helped me see the metaphor behind it. And she was amazing. She's actually still in my life. And that was when I was 17 years old.
Wow.
That's awesome. That is great.
That's a testament to its effectiveness.
Well,
I've had plenty bad therapists since.
I mean, that's one of the reasons that why we do this podcast is, we know everybody's going through something mentally, but there's still this like stigma and shame and stuff attached to it that, some people aren't ready to talk about their own healing or explore their own healing. And so we're hoping that through this, that, we're at least able to kind of get a little bit more of the noise out there to let people know that it's okay to talk about your mental struggles. It's okay to talk about being in therapy. It's okay to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Speaking of fear of feminine and beyond the gay community and beyond females, there's this whole thing that like perceived masculinity is perceived as experiencing a feeling and just not reacting to it, which is obviously that's being a psychopath. That's not being a man. And there's such a fear. I think when the feminine side of the psyche is your intuition, and you can see they want us tuned into our intuition. They want us, like with politicians and things like that. You see, they want to control the narrative.
Absolutely.
Well, we just got to keep raising our voices.
Mm-hmm.
So what made you guys connect horror and healing?
I'm huge into going to the horror conventions, and there are some great ones here on the East Coast. So I was at one last March, Monster Mania in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and waiting in line to meet a guest. And there was this young man next to me who was clearly in some kind of duress and very anxious, like visibly. I was about to say, like, hey, because it's, how they are, they get crowded. I was about to say, just, if you could just step away and then come back into line when it's your turn, like that would be fine. But before I did that, the person on the other side of him noticed the DVDs he was holding and complimented them. And all of a sudden, like all the anxiety and fear washed away. And they started chatting, and we're just chatting it up for the rest of the time in line. And Kendall had already put the bug in my ear about, hey, let's do, a horror podcast, but we hadn't fallen on, what the theme was going to be. So I just immediately was like, oh, horror heals. And so I called it and I was like, told him the story. And like, I just had this experience. I think this is our calling. I think this is what we need to go. And so that was it. And then we just started planning the series from there and launched on Friday the 13th in September last year. And feedback has been wonderful. So many people saying like, wow, this is so needed. Like, I don't know why nobody's thought of this before, but this is so needed. So yeah, it's been great.
And we bonded over, or we'll have been together for 20 years. Very early on, that was our thing.
Yeah.
So
thank goodness.
Yeah.
I'm glad Kendall wasn't like a huge rom-com person.
God. I'm not.
So like our joint go-tos are horror movies, RuPaul's Drag Race, and that's about there's plenty. There's certainly plenty to explore there, especially these days when there are just so many great independent movies being made that are streaming or fan films on YouTube and stuff. Sid Haig is definitely considered a treasure to so many. I remember he's still very sad about his passing, and such a fixture on the convention scene, and just very, very nice guy. Like, I've never heard anybody say a bad thing about Sid. So can you talk a little bit about how you ended up doing this Captain Spaulding makeup?
Yeah, absolutely. I met Sid. I started seeing him, I think, in 2005 at Dragon Con was the first time I saw him here in Atlanta. And I kept popping up like he was in Gatlinburg. I was doing Monster Mania and stuff like that back then. He was like, "Where do you live?" So I got familiar with my face pretty quickly in makeup, of course. And I just so happened one Dragon Con, I cosplayed Captain Spaulding, and I showed him the picture and everything. And so next thing I knew, he was doing an in makeup appearance, and I'd seen his in makeup where he had married someone, officiated a marriage, and the makeup wasn't good. Then his costume was like overalls, and it didn't look like Spaulding. And I didn't have the best costume then. It was kind of something just put together. But I said, "Do you want to borrow this?" And he was like, "Yeah." So the next thing I knew, I was taking him a costume, and I had the more typical costume with the big bow tie, the red, white, and blue. My mom could make you one of those, like using that as a pattern. So she ended up making, if you've ever seen him in the in-costume appearances, that was my mother that made the costumes.
Really wow.
Cool. That's so cool.
I'll have to send you there's a photo of me with Sid and Bill Moseley in costume. I don't really cosplay. This is like barely cosplay, but I'm cosplaying as Baby.
That's great. Yeah, Sid was a hypnotherapist.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that.
He sure was. I did a panel with him and Amy Allen from, what is the show?
I can't either.
She's eluding me right now. She's
I know
no
her
longer
name.
on it, but yeah, I did a panel with her and them about the Trickster, and so I have that on video too. It's not the greatest audio, but I found that out about him being a hypnotherapist. We talked about the Trickster characters being, Amy said that Dead Files is what she was on. Yes. Was talking about how they would come up, like if there was like undealt with childhood trauma. And, I thought that was really interesting. They kind of point you where you need healing. And the clown is just, again, that archetype pointing you to, like, you be menacing, poltergeist and stuff like that, but they really point you to where you need the healing at.
What did Sid think of your makeup job?
He never really said anything, but he was really sweet. Like, I ended up hosting Days of the Dead in 2012, and I had a big set, like a mausoleum set, and I had go dancers and everything. And Bill Moseley was like, "Are you going to be playing disco all week?" He kind of scolded me. So Sid came up, like, he's like, "The Bill said you could play your music." Like, he was my dad. It was so hilarious. I always wanted to do like a father-son thing where I had to come out to him and call it Sid in a different kind of Nancy.
Yeah. I love that. We love hearing stories like that. It enriches the legacy. So thank you for sharing that. How did you end up in the movies?
With Halloween 2 shooting here, I knew some people working on it, and so I was able to become an extra in the movie. And then with Clown Motel, reputation got out there after a while, so I ended up talking to the director of that and flying out for a week. And I really wasn't in that too much. I was in it for a second. I mostly did the makeup in it.
Oh,
Some
right.
of the makeup.
Very cool.
What was it like being on a Rob Zombie set?
It was amazing. He's very nice. He seemed very nice. All the people he works with are so nice. I'm sure you met Leslie Easterbrook. And did you guys ever get to meet Karen Black?
No, sadly, no. She was so good in House of a Thousand Corpses. I mean, she's amazing in everything she's in. But that was just, yeah, she really ate that.
Yes.
Seems
Yes.
like.
That she, talk about, Blanche from Golden Girls. She was very much that cat on a hot tin roof kind of Blanche
Yes.
character, the Southern mother. And I loved how she was so kind of like my mother. Like my mom loved people and overlooked their flaws, but also, she saw all parts of her kids and just accepted them. And I just loved that about her. I was so drawn to her.
Wow.
And, she chose her own outfits for that movie. And,
No.
and the movie, it was filmed at the Chicken Ranch, which was the best little whorehouse in Texas. I have a theory that they said, you're going to look like an aged prostitute. I think she thinks she's an aged Dolly Parton in that movie. I really do.
I did not know that was the Chicken Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
That's a nice piece of trivia.
I asked Sid Haig about her, and he was like, she's always talking about that goddamn Scientology.
That's funny.
She was really cool, though. I only got to meet her briefly, but she recommended Red Dirt, which was a movie with her and Walt Goggins. And she's like, it's about a different kind of mother. I took her some Godiva chocolates, and she just was really cute. I was very glad I got to meet her.
Cool. Yeah. I've heard nothing but good things about Rob. And I know that he also feels the same way that we do, that horror is good for our mental wellness. Horror can be healing. Mm-hmm. Of course, he's a dream guest to get on here. And someday, who knows? We'll just keep putting the stuff out in the universe and see what happens.
Yeah, I got to be on set with him 2 days, but I only got like 2 seconds to talk to him. Like, don't look at him, don't talk to him. But he was nice when I did get to speak to him.
Yeah.
Like I said, meeting Dee Wallace, and everybody that I've talked to and met has been so nice that's affiliated with him.
Oh, Dee's fantastic. She was one of our first guests that we had on the podcast. And yeah, she's great and very into the healing and stuff too.
Yeah,
so.
Perfect person to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
Very kind.
Yeah.
So what happens now where Circus Envy is going to pop up? I know you said you haven't done the makeup in a while, but like what brings Circus Envy out into the light, right out into the dark?
Yeah, that's a good question. I am trying to determine that now. I'm really trying to go more toward, I really want to do something where I can use cosplay with intention to help people heal. And I think there's so much power in, you can cosplay a hero and something that you idealize about yourself, but when you're able to cosplay and let yourself do something that's not totally positive and embrace those subconscious parts or bring those out into the light, there's something so powerful about that. Yeah. And I don't think it's a new concept because shamanic masking, the shamans go in and retrieve the broken parts of the psyche or the soul. And it's putting back the dissociative pieces after trauma. It's just, I love that parallel. I didn't realize how much, like with the indigenous sacred clowns and the way they mirror, I didn't know any of this about clowns, like when I first started doing clowns, and it just intrigued me that they had such a role in showing, like they embrace the negative side. They make fun of things. They're nothing sacred to them. And as a society, we're so tied to seeing one side. We don't see the paradox. We see one side of the issue. And it's so important do you guys know Emily Devine by any chance?
No. Not ringing a bell.
She does a TED Talk on the Trickster, and this is my life advice. She said she started out in improv comedy, and the one rule of improv comedy is you can never deny another person's reality. And that is, that is so amazing to me. Like that has helped me navigate, my relationships with my Baptist brothers and sisters. So I've healed so much. Like in 2001, My biggest fear ever was my mother dying, So, of course, she chose to come and live with me. She died. She didn't go with her Baptist, children. She went with the clown and the drag queen roommates. So,
Give me
and
where she should be.
I always thought I'm too sensitive. Like growing up, I just thought that I was so different than, my sister lives on a golf course. It's so funny. Like, we're so different. But I realized during that time with taking care of mom that my sensitivity is not a weakness, but, my emotions and things like that. And I realized I was the only sibling that could do that. And I really found my place in the family through that. And it's so weird that the thing that I feared the most ended up healing me so much. And I've been kind of in a period of isolation. I haven't done a lot of conventions or anything like that. And I'm trying to find how I want to show up in the world now, how I want to combine this character that I put out there kind of as a novelty. So I've been trying to do that for a while, but now I really feel that I'm on a path where I'm healed enough that I really have something to offer people.
I totally agree. You've got a lot to offer out there, and it would be amazing to see you at a convention. Dragon Con was like my first weekend long convention back when I think it was only 18 or 19 the first time that we went. But wow, what an experience Dragon Con is.
Yeah, it's overwhelming too now, especially. It's gotten so big.
Yeah, even back when I was going, I think it was 97, 96 or 97, and it's just wow, if you just want to people watch, you just grab your popcorn.
It is that. You definitely see all kind of costumes and everything else.
Yeah, it was so impressive. That was kind of my first sort of taste of, because it's such a hodgepodge of a little bit of everything, sci-fi, horror, comic books, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But it was just wow, this is something. This is really cool. Dragon Con was the first time I really got that twinge before I even ever went to a horror themed convention.
Mm-hmm.
I started out, in 96, I was going to Tower Records here in Atlanta looking to see in toy magazines. So we didn't have, I didn't have internet at that point. And I started traveling. I went to Spooky World in Massachusetts to see Elvira. And that was my first trip. And then conventions weren't so big then. And the next year I wanted to meet Butch Patrick. And so we go to New York. I fly in with a friend of mine to New York City. I had no idea. I was under 25, so we had to rent a van from Rent-A-Wreck, having no idea the drive, So we're, going around the city and everything else. And then that night, drive overnight to, we go to Niagara Falls. That's where the convention was. So I meet Butch Patrick, and he was like, "Oh, you live in Atlanta? I live in Conyers." So I could have taken Martin to see him. All that drive went by the Amityville house and everything. We could
awesome.
Squeezed in everything.
Very cool.
So you kind of alluded to this before. I know but Circus Envy's been around before, this killer clown resurgence. Of course, the Terrifier movies and Art the Clown has become the current serial killer icon. How do you feel about that whole phenomenon?
I love Sid Haig and I love Captain Spaulding. I'm not that huge of a fan of other clowns. I know that's terrible, but I like it in concept because I think it's such a good metaphor. I'm a little more into the psychology part of it. The Terrifier, the first one, it just didn't. Sometimes I can be into fun, It just didn't grasp me that much. I know he's very nice. I met him briefly.
It's not everybody's taste, for sure.
I totally agree. Well, people, I don't like Tim Curry for some reason. He reminds me of my Christian school coach. And it's traumatic. So. And I was like, "What? You don't like him?" I'm like, "No, I don't." I just didn't get that. I didn't get that interpretation of the book very well. I just didn't see that. There's just certain aspects, I think, of clown stuff that appeal to me.
The last question that we always ask every guest on the podcast is, who is your favorite final person in a horror movie? The character that survives?
Oh, gosh. I don't know.
It's not an easy one.
It's really not. I can't even think now.
I know. It's my mind always goes to current things, but yeah, that's not really what I chose.
Well, now
I'm trying to think of movies and who survives now. You just made this whole thing out of it. It's a whole Matrix. I can't even. You guys totally stumped me on this.
So mine is Nancy Thompson, Heather Langenkamp from the original Nightmare on Elm Street. And Kendall's is Adrian King.
Adrian King from the first Friday the 13th.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. There's something that movie, and it's all about what was happening in your personal life, right? Like I just identify, I love the Halloween series, always will, but there's something about the Friday the 13th series that it feels like the first series that I embraced, you know?
Yeah. I think Nancy's great too. I like the whole concept of what you put your belief into, I like the way they ended that and putting power into it, putting power into fear.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way horror conventions give you the opportunity to approach things with less judgment and more curiosity. Because we need more of that in the world.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, we so appreciate you taking your time, and we really are looking forward to hearing where Circus Envy is going to emerge next. So definitely keep us in the loop on that, because I think you definitely have a great message, a great heart, and that's what we need right now.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys too. When I saw Horror Hills, I was like, yes, my people. I just loved it. I was like, oh, so excited typing you.
Yeah, this has been great.
Well, and heck, if you start delving more into the healing thing, you could be our Georgia correspondent for
crap.
So we scratch the surface.
Well, we'll definitely be staying in touch then.
Sounds good.
Thank you again for putting on the arm and everything for us too. We appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
We were really moved by how Circus Envy used his character to reclaim parts of himself that had been buried under years of trauma and shame. His story about finding comfort in the dark, using meditation techniques from Amelia Kincaid, and embodying the Trickster to do his shadow work, so powerful. We loved his honesty about the challenges of being a gay, effeminate kid in the South, and how the horror community gave him a space to not only survive, but thrive. And his story about Sid Haig borrowing his costume, and the fact that his mom made the iconic outfit Sid wore at conventions, was such a cool detail. And who knew Karen Black picked her own wardrobe for House of 1,000 Corpses? There's some serious horror history in this episode. We're so grateful to Circus Envy for sharing his story with us. It's a reminder that sometimes the mask we wear can help us take off the real masks we've been hiding behind. If you loved this episode, please like, subscribe, and share it with your fellow horror-loving friends. And remember, if someone asks, is horror good for mental wellness? You tell them, of course it is. The Horror Heals podcast is produced and presented by How the Cow Ate the Cabbage, LLC.